Thank you, bro. And so, Mr. Armani, I just want to thank you so much for being my special guest today on the Fly on the Wall show. Thank you for taking up my request and my offer. I've been following you on Twitter for a very long time. You're somebody that I know can provide a lot of value.
Thank you, bro. I follow you on Instagram too, so I enjoy your videos. I think you're very well spoken. Yeah.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that, sir. And so, for the people who don't know who you are and what it is that you do, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Armani Chaudhry. I'm the founder of Armani Talks, which is currently a company that provides short stories to help engineers and entrepreneurs improve public speaking, social skills, creative writing, and much more. My background consists of being an engineer, being the vice president of Toastmasters, and working with different people to help them build confidence, getting in front of the camera, giving their first speech, and feeling more comfortable expressing themselves. So I started Armani Talks in 2018. So I'm about to hit the 3-year mark soon.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Amazing, man. Well, thank you so much for, telling the people who you are and what it is that you do. You're definitely somebody that I had to get in touch with, man. I've been following you for such a long time for various reasons because, one of the things that, I love to do is I love to write, I love to speak, I love to communicate, but I was always afraid to get in front of people and to actually speak. I feel like I had so much to say, but I just kept it all inside. Like, I feel like I had this big personality, this big voice, but anytime it was like in front of a large group of people or when I wanted to perform my poetry, I'd freeze up. I'd make all kind of excuses like, dang, I can't do that. What if these people laugh at me and all these different things, right? And,
Right.
I believe that's like the number one fear for most people, which is public speaking. Can you talk a little bit about that fear?
Yes. So public speaking fear is the number one fear from different studies, and it's
Yeah.
called glossophobia. I don't know if you
Philosophy.
ever, yes, so there's like a formal name for it and everything. And the reason that it's a very scary phenomena for a lot of people is not because of the ideas part, it's more
Yeah.
so potentially failing in front of other people. So that's
Mm.
what holds a lot of people back. And it's something that can hold people back, especially if you're speaking in front of people that you know, or
Yeah.
it could be strangers. So it's great that you ended up, putting yourself out there. And
Yeah.
one thing that I've seen uh, is that it's a skill set. So the more that you practice over time, the easier that it gets. So in the initial stages, it's always bumpy, but over time, just by making these little micro reps, they start to
Yeah.
add up a lot.
Yes. I definitely agree. And so you said you were an engineer. Like, what type of engineering did you study or do you actually do?
Sure. So I went to school for my electrical engineering degree,
Nice. My
and
dad's an electrician.
oh, is it?
Yeah. From the
Yeah. So
island.
yeah, it's a great field, and I did my master's in systems engineering. So throughout my career, I worked in the electrical industry, aerospace, and the financial industry. And this is where like the two worlds were merging, where
Yeah.
my engineering background, along with my Toastmasters background, were merging because there was a lot of these different engineering industries where people were extremely gifted with the hard skills. They knew how to
Mhm.
code, they knew Excel, they knew Tableau. But the problem was that they couldn't give a speech. They didn't know how to send emails to people higher up than them without,
Wow.
yeah, coming off rude at times. So that's
Yeah.
when I was starting to see these two worlds merging, where communication skills were very important for engineers, especially nowadays, and
Yeah.
engineers were down to learn communication as well.
Wow. So is that where you decided that you wanted to become a better communicator or did it start before that?
So that's a great question. That was
Thank you.
roughly around the same time because I came to understand, like, when I was going to school for engineering, we didn't really have much communications classes. We had a lot
Mm.
of like learn electrical circuits, learn
So-
diagrams,
yeah.
yeah, all the science stuff. But once I started my career, I had to speak a lot. I had to, play with the office politics, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I just didn't have too much confidence speaking up. So that's when I started to invest in Toastmasters. And
Yeah. What is Toastmasters for people that don't know? I've it's actually funny because a few years ago when I first started getting in front of the camera, one of my friends, she was like, yo, Javier, you should join Toastmasters. And I was like, what is Toastmasters? And I started looking up, and I was like, dang, that would really be a good fit for me. I just never did it. I never committed. But what is Toastmasters for people that don't know?
Sure. So Toastmasters is a global public speaking club, which helps people within their community improve public speaking. There's
Nice.
different ways to do that, where members can give planned speeches and they can get evaluated. And there's also a section for impromptu speaking called table topics. So yeah, the first time I heard about it, I thought it was a restaurant. Toast.
Toastmasters. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yep, yep. So they came to my college at the time, USF, and
Nice.
my friends were like, "Oh, you down to go to a Toastmasters meeting?" I was like, "Nah, I just
What is
ate." Yeah, but then I
That's
found
a
out it was
study.
a public speaking club.
Yeah. Nice,
Did you end up
nice, nice.
going?
Well, I actually, when I found out about it, I was in Tampa. I did not go. I should have did it, but I did not go. It was like a transitional period. It's kind of funny because I'm pretty sure there's a club on the Tampa campus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was on Tampa campus like every day, like just working on my business. Though I wasn't a student, I already graduated from Florida Atlantic University, but I had one of my brothers in one of my organizations. He let me use like his credentials to log in the library. So me and my girlfriend, we go to the library every day working on our business, our social media business. So it was kind of funny. I wasn't there to study Toastmasters. I was working on my business, but it was something that did cross my mind because I went on the website and everything. I was looking at some of the tips, how to become a better communicator, better speaking, everything, but I never committed to actually becoming a member of Toastmasters, which I still
Gotcha.
think I could. I still think I should, especially if it's something that we could do virtually now. If there's something that's possible, I definitely probably would, because that's still one of my goals, to become a better communicator.
For sure. And the beauty nowadays is they changed it up. So when I was first doing Toastmasters, everyone had to work out of like the same book. It was called Competent Communicator. But
Okay.
nowadays they have a thing called the Pathways program. So you get to choose which path fits you and your personality type. There's one for comedy. There's another one for like motivational speaking. Another one for leadership. So nowadays is actually the perfect time to join, and because it's much
Okay.
more dynamic. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
A lot of it
absolutely.
is, yep, a lot of it you could access online. So everything is gathered in the same spot. So it's never too late.
Absolutely. No, I'm definitely considering anybody that's actually considering becoming a member. Where can they look for more information to join that?
So they would go on Google and just type in find a Toastmasters club near me.
Okay.
And from there, the first link will allow them to just put in their zip code
Yeah.
and it'll show the closest Toastmasters.
Nice, nice. And this was something you actually became the external vice president for.
Yes. So initially, the first time I went, everyone's like, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to do any talking. So that's how
Yeah.
they dragged me there. And it just so happened that I ended up getting called on stage to do the impromptu speaking part. And my topic was maraca. You ever
So you
heard
have to
like
make
the
a
maraca?
random speech on the maraca instrument.
Yeah, dude. And this was the one in my college. So there were like a lot of my fraternity brothers, like
Yeah.
cute girls, random
Yeah.
people in the audience. And I just froze. I didn't say a single word.
Uh,
And I was just like, man, what am I going to say about maraca? And
yeah.
it was pretty embarrassing the first time. So
Mm.
later on, when I went back to Toastmasters, I never thought I was going to actually even be a member. I just wanted to prove that I could do like a small little table topic speech.
Did you go right back after, or were you just like, did you go missing for a little because you were like embarrassed, or did you come right back?
Bro, I went missing for like 3 to 5 months.
Oh
Like
wow, you were just embarrassed.
it was that embarrassing. And
Yeah, man.
most people forgot. Most people like, the first couple of days they were like making some jokes, but afterwards they forgot. But I still remembered, and that
Human
was that.
beings, we put this fear in our minds. We think people are thinking about us, like we're that important, and it's just like, what are they thinking about me? But half the time, people forget.
Yeah, dude, and that's exactly what happened. They
Yeah,
forgot. Uh, they forgot, and later on, when I went back to Toastmasters, I just wanted to prove I could do that small little speech,
yeah.
which I was able to do. And from there, it became like a rush, you see?
Mm,
And that's when I went up from just a guest to a member to the recruitment chair, where I'd get other people to come in, and
yeah.
then recruitment chair to external vice president, where I'd throw different events and bring awareness to the club.
Wow, wow. So you started off as just, just something to try. You tried it. In your words, you completely tanked. You failed. You folded. You went missing for a few months. And you're just like, oh man, people are laughing at me. I can't show my face. Then you came back. People forgot. Then you killed it. And from there, you became addicted to speaking and started actually building upon the club. That's an amazing thing.
Thank you, man. And you nailed it. That's exactly like the workflow of how it went. And later on, when more people were trying to join the club,
Yeah.
you'll be surprised, Javier. Uh, a lot of them have the same concerns. They're thinking,
Mhm.
well, what if I fail and they remember like forever? I'm like, that's not what happens in real world.
Yeah. And I could speak for myself, man. That was one of my biggest things that stopped me from just even like, because I'm a very like, because I'm an introvert, but once I'm comfortable, I'm very passionate, personable. I'm trying to make everybody laugh. I'm trying to, just be social, but it takes me to become comfortable. And so not all the times in whatever position in life, maybe it could be work, it could be business, that you have the time to become comfortable. So like what steps would you like recommend to somebody that wants to become more comfortable when they're in a public setting and they need to speak to people?
So one of the best ways to be comfortable is going in with the initial focus of focusing more on the other person.
Mm,
That's one of the main things I learned in my Toastmasters journey, where in the initial stages, I was getting really nervous because
yeah.
I kept putting too much focus on me. I'm like,
Mm,
will they like me? Are they going to clap for me? And the more that it's me focused, the
yeah.
more anxious that a person gets. So
Wow. Yeah.
when flipping the focus on the other person, it just melts away nerves like instantaneously. So that's something that worked for me in terms of the public speaking and the social skills world.
Yeah. Wow. Prior to you had when we first started the conversation, you talked about hard skills, and then you talked about like how the engineers, most of them had the hard skills, but a lot of them didn't have like these interpersonal skills, like these soft skills. Can you talk about like what some of these soft skills are?
Sure. So there's five that I particularly talk about with Armani Talks. It's public speaking, it's social skills, it's emotional intelligence, creativity, and storytelling. And these are just five of many different soft skills. And the reason they call it soft is because it's intangible. It's very difficult to measure, like your creativity, for example. And
Yeah.
based off of your questions, you're a very creative person, but
Thank you.
it's very difficult to quantify that. And the traditional engineering mind works in terms of quantification. How can I
Yes.
measure it? How can I create an Excel formula, an algorithm for it?
Yeah.
But soft skills are different, where there's no measurement really, but it does have practical benefits in our life. Where as engineers start to progress in their career, they have to give more speeches. They have
Yeah.
to manage other people's emotions within their team. So that's where emotional regulation comes in, problem solving skills, the ability to listen, which
Yes.
is a skill set in itself. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, but it definitely gets difficult for engineers because most of our schooling isn't catered towards that. You
Mm,
see what I'm saying? It's catered towards something completely opposite.
absolutely. So you said something I feel like is very, very important, especially as just a human being, right? You said something about emotional regulation. Can you talk a little bit about emotional regulation and what that entails?
Sure. So this was a word that, when I was in undergrad, I thought it was a fake word. I thought
Yeah,
people just said, oh, EQ, man, that's just like a made up thing to control people. For some reason, I thought this, like 19-year-old version of me thought this. But by the first time that I choked that Toastmaster speech, I
yeah,
came to understand that, you know, you could be the smartest person intellectually, but that doesn't mean anything if you're terrified. It's like
Yeah.
all that starts to just crumble before you. So
Hmm.
that's when I started to take emotional regulation more seriously, which is the ability to control energy. Emotion in itself is just a word. What that word really signifies is energy plus perception. Energy is like the physical sensations we're feeling, and the
Yes.
perception is the narrative that we're assigning it.
Mhm.
Emotional intelligence comes down to embracing the energy and controlling the perception, where that's a skill set in itself. And I would say it's one of the most important skill sets for all communicators, whether it's an interview, whether it's a speech, you got to be able to control the nerves. And just for your viewers, one of the best ways to control it is to learn to feel the sensations in your body and
Mm.
feel it without judgment. Because a lot of the times we'll be like, oh, I'm nervous, and we'll say it a little too quick. Well, it's
Yeah.
better to not use that word yet and just feel the sensations. This is a very simple way to build EQ.
So a lot of times we're not even nervous, but we convince ourselves that we're nervous because we just say it.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised how often that actually happens. It's like, um, have you heard of the phrase called emotional literacy?
Emotional literacy.
Mm.
I guess I could say I've heard it, but not frequently. Like I guess you consider it kind of like financial literacy, but towards your emotions.
Yes. So normally, for the average person, like if
Mhm.
you ask them what kind of emotions do you have, they'll be
Yeah.
like happy, sad, angry, confused. It's
Yeah.
very like surface level understanding. But
Mm.
in the human experience world, multiple emotions can happen at the same time.
Right.
You ever had that moment when you're a little sad, but you're feeling hopeful at the same time? Uh,
Absolutely.
you're anxious, but you're feeling excited at the same time. This is emotional literacy, where rather than just labeling the emotion too quickly with a very surface level understanding, you feel the emotion and then you label it. And most of the times, when you feel the emotion first, you don't even have to label it because now the problem is resolved.
Wow. Emotional
Yeah.
literacy. Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit. Speaking about emotions, let's talk a little bit about like the ego, right? Everybody
Mhm.
has an ego. How does like the ego come into play when it comes to communication, good and bad?
Okay, so let me say the good part first, because the
Absolutely.
good part actually gets undermined.
Yeah.
The good part will help us navigate around the bad part. So the
Absolutely.
good part is that your ego is highly creative.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had someone cut you off in traffic in a very aggressive way?
All the time.
Yeah, and
I'm from Florida.
yeah, you're from Florida, and let's say your girlfriend came to you and was like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And you are capable of creating a very compelling story right there on the spot. You won't believe it. There was this uh, aggressive looking idiot that just cut me off, and you're just going in storytelling mode. And this is the
Absolutely.
ego, which is creating a story out of thin air. So the ego
Mm,
is very creative. It's capable of creating stories. So that's the good part.
okay.
Okay, that's the good part. The bad part is a lot of these stories sometimes can get us into trouble. You see, back to that car example, the person cut you off, and now the story is coming in your mind like,
Mm,
this guy is hurting my character. This guy's going out of his way to just cut me off. He didn't cut
yeah.
off anyone else in the highway,
Just
just
me.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the ego that's untamed. That means the ego is controlling the person rather than the other way around. This is
Wow.
the good thing about communication skills, because communication skills helps us learn how to control the ego, so we're the master rather than the servant.
Wow. I really like how you said we become the masters and not the servants because, oftentimes we run off of emotion. Like we don't even take the time to really breathe, to think about what we're doing. Like we just move based off of just how we feel about the situation. That whole accident, that not even accident, the whole cutting somebody off, that could turn into something totally bigger than it has to be because of emotions, because of just reacting based off of those things. How do we
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was like 100%. I agree with that.
Yes. How do you like how do you control the ego in the sense? So now you take because to become a better communicator, a lot of times you have to kind of like, observe what's going on, and not just react. So how can you like limit that reaction, limit like the things that we do when we're acting out of ego and become a better communicator?
One of the best ways to do that is to increase knowledge of the self, because the better that we understand how we work, now we can expect it for the next time. And just to give you an example of this, let's say you're walking across a river on your way back from work. Okay.
Yeah.
You make this walk every single day after work, and normally you're drinking uh, a Coke. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you're walking across the river, you're done with the Coke. So you throw it into the river. Okay. Let's just say that this is the case. And this is something that you're doing for weeks and weeks on end. You're
Yeah.
throwing the trash into the river. Well, one of these days, you see a little boy that has a bucket. He's picking up water from that river. And you go to the guy, hey, what are you doing? And the little boy tells you that his family can't afford water. So his family gets all the water from this river.
From the river.
And now immediately, the person who's throwing the trash in the river feels like very sad and very
Yeah.
embarrassed. Like, whoa, I
He's
can't
throwing
believe,
that same river.
yeah, I can't believe I've been throwing my trash into this river. So the next day, when he's drinking his Coke, he's finished and he's walking across the river. Right before he's about to throw it, there's that knowledge of what happened with this little boy that
Yeah.
comes in and makes him second guess himself. And that little
Mhm.
second guessing portion is the beginning of a new behavior.
Yeah.
So, in a very similar case, this is what can happen with us. If we start to understand, okay, well, this makes me angry, or this makes me, this is one of my sensitive spots. If we could get in the habit of, let's say, writing or articulating it,
Yeah.
this gives us like more knowledge, like that little boy gave that guy that keeps throwing the trash in the river.
Yeah. Wow.
It's one
So
of
like
the best ways to control. Yep.
yeah, like awareness is key. Now that you're
Awareness
aware
is
of
key.
something, now you know that it exists. Now you have a choice.
Exactly. And awareness in itself is a process. That's why I say, like, let's say someone doesn't meditate and they're trying to control their
Mhm.
ego. One of the
Yeah.
best ways is to start writing, whether it's a Twitter account, whether it's a journal, something like that, because it forces you to look within.
Wow. Now, speaking about Twitter, like you've amassed such a really large following on Twitter. I actually followed you. It's kind of funny because, like, the way I found you on Twitter, I didn't find you just based off of your tweets. Like, I was, I mean, I do a lot of social media stuff, and I used to post a lot of my poetry on my Twitter. And this guy that I follow, he lives all the way in France. This young guy all the way in France. He was like, "You should follow this account. I see you being like this account." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He sends me your page, and I just started going down your threads and all your tweets, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like what you were saying, I was just like, "Wow." Wow, like these things were like resonating with me because it's a lot of different, as an entrepreneur, a lot of different mindset tips, behavior tips, how to be confident, how to be a better speaker, and a lot of things that aligned with me. I instantly had to follow. This is like maybe like 2, 3 years ago, and I was just like,
Whoa.
wow, like this guy is dope. So how did you like amass like your Twitter following? Was it just like you said, like just putting your feelings out there, and then you just saw people like started resonating with it?
Yeah. So initially, it was just a hobby.
Yeah.
So I did Toastmasters like in my earlier life, in my earlier
Mhm.
20s. And then once they introduced the Pathways program, I decided that I was gonna like restart it and I was gonna document the entire journey. So
Uh,
yeah, so that's when I started my Twitter account. I started to, document my journey. And I also included my engineering tips. And from there, I started to get DMs from different people saying that the tweets helped. And
yeah.
it came to a point where even one person was like, hey, I have a speech coming up. I have to give a best man speech at my brother's wedding. Can you coach me? And
Uh,
he's like, I'll pay you. And mind you, I'm still doing this account for a hobby. So
yeah.
I was like, you're not gonna pay me. And he ended up paying me like the money, like through PayPal. And we did the service. He killed it at his brother's best man speech. But it got me thinking at that point, like this could be something bigger
Much more.
where
Yeah.
yeah, it could really help people, in a very practical sense as well. So what started off as a hobby is still a hobby. Like I still write for fun, but it
Yeah.
now has the ability to, also tweak people's speech giving and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. So something that started off as a hobby, something you were doing for fun, you put it out there, you started getting all this information like, oh man, I really love what you're doing. Thank you. Okay. And can you help me? Can you coach me? So that was like your first client in a sense.
Yes, that was the first ever client. And it
Shout out to social
really,
media.
yeah, because you mentioned you currently have a business right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Online business?
Majority of all my businesses are remote online. I do e-commerce. I have my book of poetry. I have my podcast. A lot of them is definitely e-commerce brands.
Yes. So it's a different mindset for online business where online, space and time doesn't matter too much. Meaning that my
Absolutely.
first client was from Australia. I'm in
Absolutely.
Tampa, right? So this wasn't even a concept that would exist, let's say,
2 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
You see, when we were first coming to this country, we had to use like phone cards to contact our relatives in Bangladesh. So
Yeah.
it shatters a lot of your notions regarding how business works along with technology.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing thing to understand that, because that's the power of social media, right? The internet, technology, our phones. I'm speaking to you on my phone right now. The ability to, like you said, transcend time and space itself. Because if you really think about it, time and space, all these things are things that we as people created. So now we have this wonderful tool that you could be in Tampa, Florida, just tweeting, inspiring somebody in Australia to ask for your services, actually creating a service for yourself. This wasn't something that you were charging for. So he put that thought into your mind, like maybe I can charge for this. He paid you, he killed it. Have you ever spoken to him since?
Yes, I still speak to him. Most of my clients, we have a WhatsApp group, so
Yeah.
I still keep in touch with a lot of them. And just to add on to your point, for sure, so space gets collapsed. Plus, let's say your podcast episodes, something
Mm-hmm.
that you record later today can be
Yes.
discovered 10 years from now.
Yeah,
You
that's
see,
amazing.
and unlike matter can corrode, but information doesn't corrode. So, so what you're creating are information, and this is something that your great grandkids can interpret in complete quality form. So just like space being something that is becoming fuzzier, so is time, which is which is very unique. It's a very unique time to be alive.
Yeah, man. It's I feel like it's one of the best times to be alive, man, because you mentioned the fact that, when you're coming from Bangladesh, the fact that you had to use phone cards to communicate. Now you can communicate with your clients through WhatsApp, Twitter, and whatever the medium is. And just even with recent years of just, everything to do with COVID, the pandemic and everything, where it kind of like it was a bad thing, but it could have been, depending on the perspective that you have, it could have also been a good thing. People lives are lost. I lost, people, and it's a bad thing, man. But
Sorry
like
about that.
it's okay, man. But it created like a shift. A lot of people are now, looking into entrepreneurship. A lot of people are looking into self-development. A lot of people are trying to, are starting their own podcast, their own shows. A lot of people are, realizing that they have these different skills that they didn't have at all. How do you feel like the pandemic kind of influenced it or impacted, speaking and communicating for good and bad reasons?
So I'll give you a real life example right now.
Mm-hmm.
So 2019, I was working with a really renowned public speaking coach in the
Yes.
Largo area, and I wanted to learn from him because he also used to do singing, acting, Broadway.
Yeah.
I thought he could open me up to a brand new world.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, when I was working with him, he would host speaking engagements. I would uh, typically do emceeing, and I would see how the public speaking game worked from his end.
Yes.
Well, since COVID started, he has been having his perception flipped, where
Mm-hmm.
his entire life, he's in his 60s, he's had to do live events where a lot of people are coming, watching him in a geographic location. So nowadays, he's investing in his YouTube. He's getting his old content, posting it up on YouTube,
Yeah,
and just seeing how his perception is changing. He's
yeah.
saying,
The
man,
technology thing.
yeah, like this technology thing it's not just something that's a fad. It's something that can
Yeah,
really help. So it gives more perspective. Let's say even with a
yeah,
YouTube video that gets 100 views. For some YouTubers, that's too little. It's like 100 views, that's nothing. They just
yeah,
see numbers on a screen.
yeah.
Let's say you have a public speaking experience with the live events.
100
Getting
different people.
right, like seeing the 100 people come, how it's normally like a 3 to 6 week process.
Yeah.
It's something great. Yeah, what are you gonna say?
No, I was saying that's actually a really great perspective that you're making when you actually turn those numbers into real life people. Like public, the difference between public live speaking and the internet, where we see it as this big vast thing, but if we were in this one space with those same amount of people, it's kind of like, whoa, these are 100 people that came to see me.
Yes, and the thing with a lot of these public speaking events is that there's a lot of back end work. You got to
Yeah,
create flyers for a couple of like weeks. That means you got to get designers. Then
yeah,
you got to create the Facebook page. You got to coordinate it with the food people, the
yeah.
speakers, the MC, so they're all on the same page. For 100 people to at least show up.
Oh
Normally,
yeah,
300 people say they're gonna come, but on big day event, 100 people come. So it kind of gives you perspective of what 100 people are like. So when you
yeah,
post a YouTube video and it gets 100 views, where other people are like, oh, aren't you sad that you only got 100 views? The way that I'm viewing it as is like, I literally just turned on the camera. I didn't even have to leave my studio, and I saved so much time. So understanding this perspective helps us better understand and appreciate this perspective.
wow. That now that see that's the beautiful thing about just even having a change perception. Like to me, like if I get like me personally, me getting 100 views, that's amazing for me, right? Especially because a few years ago I could barely do it. I was scared. To me, 100 views, like, oh man, yes, 500 views, oh wow, But when you actually take the time to really, identify this as specific people and think about all the work it entails to even have 100 people show up, it makes that perspective of 100 viewership like makes it amazing. So I feel like perception is everything. I like how you were able to kind of break that down.
Appreciate it. And you said you do poetry, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So nowadays, when you hear good poetry, you probably perceive it in a much different light than someone who doesn't understand the fundamentals of poetry, because you're
Yeah,
actually a creator and a consumer of it.
yeah, absolutely. And then like poetry, when I'm listening to somebody speak in general, or even music, like let's talk about music because that's like transcends everything. Like because like I love to write, I love to read, I want to be an artist in a sense, right? I perceive it in a way different way than somebody like I'll hear like the like the metaphors. I'll see the imagery so much clearer than somebody. Most people they might just hear like the beat, the melodies, but they're not really listening to the words. So me just being like a creator, like I'm looking at the whole picture. I'm listening to the storytelling, right? Now,
Yes.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, yes. Like I agree with you.
Yeah, man. And when it comes to music, poetry, speaking in general, it's like you have to master the art of storytelling, be able to like capture your audience's attention, through the words, through the sounds, whatever the case may be, is but through the art of telling this story, bringing your viewers and your listeners on this road and journey with you. How important is storytelling for the art of communication and just life in general?
It's very important because whenever we're factoring in perception,
Yeah,
it's immediately imperative that we include storytelling in the process. So
yeah,
me saying something like water bottle, mouse, and highlighter, that means nothing because it doesn't have meaning to the person.
just
So
words.
for the storyteller, it's a game of connecting the ideas and then delivering it to the person. So when I was growing up, I was working in Subway for a while,
Yeah,
and um, it was funny because the first day I entered Subway, I had this manager named Ashish, and
yeah,
Ashish, the first day was like, you don't just make subs, okay? I don't want you to think like that. You're a sandwich artist.
Ooh, it sounds better, right?
Yeah, and when he called me a sandwich artist, it made me go from, oh, this is just another job to, yeah, I'm making a difference.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and for the next couple of months, it was a summer job. I
Mhm.
was making subs, like all the different kinds of subs. And as I started to grow up and I started to tell more stories, do more speeches, I started to see a stunning parallel between making subs and creating a story. With
Mm,
subs, it's like you get bread, meat, cheese, vegetables, seasoning, packaging, and combine it into one experience for the customer, right? If one
yeah.
thing is missing, it doesn't really feel right. If someone really likes their sub, they'll notice if you put in American cheese rather than provolone. I know because it happened to me before.
Abs-
With stories, it's like you have characters, concepts, and your ideas, and you
yeah,
wrap it into one final experience. So I personally thought that was cool. It's like two different parallels, different
absolutely.
subjects, but similar lessons. So
Wow.
storytelling is extremely important because it's just how we perceive everything. Just to give you one more example, um,
Absolutely.
do you watch boxing or any kind of sports?
Yeah, I do. I watch boxing a little bit. I watch football, watch basketball, karate, stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So what, like, let's say Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather is an extremely skilled boxer, one of the best boxers of our generation.
Absolutely.
What made him extremely wealthy wasn't just the boxing skills, it was the content. Where if he's just boxing in his backyard, no one would pay tickets, no one would know who he is. But
Yeah.
add Floyd Mayweather plus pay per view, plus his public speaking skills as
Yeah.
being the villain, now
Yeah.
that's what made him successful. So storytelling is something that is in all parts of our society. It's just happening so effortlessly that sometimes we don't notice that it's
Yeah.
happening.
Absolutely. And I like that example that you use about the sandwich maker as well as Floyd Mayweather. They paint him as like this bad boy, pretty boy. You know what I'm saying? Like this rock star type of guy. Everybody wants him to lose so bad, but he still ends up winning. So now you're paying attention to even more than just the boxing. You're paying attention to his lifestyle, everything, right? And so
Yes.
when you become like your own personal brand, you become, let's say, a public speaker. Do you think that? Do you suggest like you kind of like having like you build like a character for yourself, like your own avatar, like your own persona, like somebody that you like switch into, like when you're going in front of other people?
I think that can help certain people. Yet, I think there has to be a fine line.
Mm,
Basically, where content should always be natural towards your experiences. And
organic,
I
yeah,
believe the best content is the one that you don't have to research. If I have to give a speech and I'm having to do a whole bunch of research for that, then
yeah,
most likely I'm speaking about something outside the boundaries of my experience.
yeah,
Um, I think it's best to always keep it in terms of your experience. But when you are speaking in front of people, uh, amp it up just a little bit more because there are more people there. If I'm kind of like, low in energy, then you're not truly in the zone. But with this perspective, speech anxiety now becomes a leverage. Anyone that's been in Toastmasters for, let's say, 15 to 20 years, they
yes,
get excited when they're nervous beforehand because
yeah,
they don't view it as nervousness. They view it as energy that's going to color their speech more. And when you're speaking in front of 500 people, there's going to be different levels to you that's unlocked. So I would
yeah,
never say create a persona for yourself because now it's creating like another like zone you have to get into. I
yeah.
believe you got to know yourself very well and then amp it up when need be, especially when you're talking in front of other people.
Okay, okay, absolutely. So okay, that's where the self awareness, all those things come into play. Emotional intelligence.
Exactly. And the beauty about soft skills is that each one plays a role on the other one. So if you're learning public speaking, for example, over time, you're going to start working on your emotional intelligence. And over time, conquering speech anxiety does wonders in conquering your social anxiety. So it's like if you get your foot in the door with just learning one, you learn a whole bunch of the other ones as well.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. I definitely agree. And so Armani, I practice, like, I know, I downloaded your free ebook, and you have some steps to become a better communicator in there. And some of the things that I've seen in your ebook, not to, spoil the surprise or anything like that, is the fact that, you talk about journaling, right? And so writing down your thoughts and everything like that. And so one of the things that I do is I journal as well as I do my affirmations, right? And so one of the things that I write down as well as say aloud is that I am one of the greatest storytellers that ever lived, right? I'm one of the greatest storytellers that ever lived. I'm one of the greatest speakers that ever lived. What is some tips that you would give me? I know you've been listening to me speak for however long now. And so in your opinion, like, what are some things that you would suggest for me personally that I can use to become a better storyteller and become a better speaker?
Well, I from just hearing you, you have a very nice rhythmic voice, which is
Thank you.
something um, that a lot of people don't have. For them, it's a struggle to get the words out. So
Yeah.
that's already a very good part for your voice. And what I think that will help you even more is
Yeah.
something that is what you're already doing. Doing
Yeah.
these interviews and consistently adding more content
Yes.
because uh, Picasso, and even modern day, uh, let's say Ed Sheeran, he always
Yeah.
got the latest hit music.
Yeah.
They all say it's about the reps and consistency. So I believe the more that you keep adding on to your content, the
Yes.
more that you're going to learn more about yourself. The dead
Yes.
wood is going to fall off, and we're just going to see you evolve in real time. So I think for you, I mean, the sky's the limit because
Thank
you
you,
have,
man. I appreciate that.
yeah, you already have a lot of natural gifts, and it's best to keep letting those natural gifts shine by, you know, developing a killer work ethic, discipline, and showing up all the time.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And that's the goal. That's the main reason for, like, even creating my podcast. And I did my book. I'm like, yo, I gotta keep doing more things. I gotta force myself. I do majority of my interviews are either live on Instagram or on Zoom. And one of the reasons I forced myself to do it live is because I was afraid of messing up. So I'm
Yeah,
like, well, if it's live, if you mess up, you mess up. Now you have to have this live conversation with whoever the person is around the world. Could be somebody that you never met before. Could be somebody that I was able to speak to, like people like Evan Carmichael live,
oh
and that
bro,
was,
his
yeah,
channel
I
is a
had,
game changer.
oh my God, Evan Carmichael, man, that's definitely a dope guy. One of my mentors, and just even him speaking to him, he was telling me, yo, it's not about being nervous. Cause I'm nervous no matter who I talk to. I'm nervous before every interview. Anytime he has to speak to somebody, he's nervous. He's networking, he's nervous, but he pushes through. He's like, even before speaking to you, I was nervous, and just knowing that it's fear is just something that, it's something that we have in our mind, something that we have to move, past. It becomes a little bit easier every time I speak. And so, just forcing myself to, be consistent and do these different things, study from, people like such as yourself, people that are actually doing these things, doing it at high levels, man. And so, I appreciate, the advice, and even you taking the time to speak with me, man, is definitely, doing wonders for my confidence. Like, okay, I can work on this, I can work on that. Oh, I heard this, emotional intelligence. Okay, how can I become more aware of certain emotion I hide? So yeah, definitely, man. So, like, this conversation is empowering for me. So I know whoever is listening is going to empower them as well.
Yeah, bro, and that's the great thing about you. You seem like a lifelong learner.
Yes, sir.
A lot of One of the coolest things since starting Armani Talks is a lot of the people that I work with are much older than me, yet
Yeah.
they have this hunger to just know more. In a traditional world, it's like, why would someone older learn from someone younger?
Hmm.
But in the mental world, that doesn't really matter. They see more experience. Even though I'm really good in this field, I could learn interviewing skills from yourself.
Thank
And
you.
that's what a lot of winners have in common. They just could learn from anyone. There's
Yeah.
this ancient parable. I don't know if I'm going to get it exactly right, but let me take my stab at it. It's like
Absolutely.
when the wood is extremely wet, it's impossible to light it up. But when the wood is made dry, it's easy to light up. And what this represents is a wood being wet is sort of like the mind that thinks it knows it all. It's like
Yeah.
when it comes in contact with new knowledge, it's like, look at this guy. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. It's a
Yeah.
scam. He doesn't do that. On the flip side, if it's a mind that has been made dry by uh, being humble, always trying to stay curious, now when the
Yes.
knowledge comes in, it lights up. So it's a
Yeah.
difference in mindset, and you seem like the latter. Like you have that dry mind which can just absorb knowledge.
I appreciate that, man. I feel like, that's the number one key to becoming successful, like being that dry wood, being able to absorb more knowledge, whether it's somebody that's younger than you, somebody that's older than you, the experience, and the whole point of my podcast, the Fly on the Wall show, is to inspire people to think, create, and chase their dreams. And, because I believe all those things, result in success. The number one reason people don't believe that they can number one reason people don't become successful because they don't believe that they could become successful. They haven't seen it. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it feels like. And so the goal is to have these various people come on the show, people that I believe that inspire me, people that motivate me, people that I feel like are successful in whatever it is that they do. So whether it's public speaking, communication, such as yourself, I'm able to bring these people on the show to show people what it looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, and how they could become that too. Because knowledge is all about sharing it. A lot of people try to keep it for themselves and hoard the
Hmm.
knowledge. But what I feel like one of my purposes is to like connect people with all these various people and show them like, yo, this knowledge is out here. Just because you didn't know that it didn't exist doesn't mean that it's out here. It doesn't have to be a secret anymore, right? You can have this too. You can have this thing, this phenomenon that looks like success is like so far away, but actually it's easier than it that your mind can even really, absorb, because like it's all a mindset. If you don't believe something to be true, or you're never gonna have it for yourself. And so it all starts in the mind. And I'm like that fly on the wall, just watching, just listening, absorbing. And I try to make sure everybody that follows me can be that fly on the wall too, man. So I think that's how I can break it down in a nutshell, man. But I just want to say, Armani, man, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. You've been so much knowledge, so much gems, and so much value has been dropped. It's so crazy to have you mentoring me on Twitter. Now I'm speaking to you face to face and actually, providing value with one another, man. It's an amazing feeling. You don't even understand. It's an amazing feeling.
I appreciate you inviting me on the show, and I did want to let you know I love the name of the podcast. It's
Thank you.
very clever, and it makes you think. It's like, because the reason that we watch content is
Yeah.
we just want to be a fly on the wall in terms of
Yeah.
being in these ideas. So I think it's extremely well thought out. I just want to let you know publicly that I like the name a lot.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, man. That means a lot to me. It definitely does. Anything I do, whether it's my book, anything that I create, merchandise, I just want people to think. I feel like that's once you get people to think, they're one
Hmm.
step closer to just succeeding in life. I believe it was Henry Ford. He said one of the hardest jobs in the world is thinking. People don't want to think. And so
Hmm.
like my job is to make people think, because once you start thinking, you're one step closer to creating. We're all
Yes,
creators. We're all creators out there. And I just want people to create. Once you start creating, you realize that, whoa, life is such an amazing thing. You really can create your reality, and so that's the mission, man. I think that's the overall mission. I see you doing the same thing, man. So I hope, it doesn't stop here. I hope we can, learn and grow from each other more, stay in contact and everything, brother.
for sure. And I wish you the best as well. Very good interviewer, and I wish a lot of success for this podcast.
Thank you, man. We're definitely gonna have you come back on again, man. I feel like there's so much more things that we could talk about, but I know I didn't want to keep you too much, man. I didn't want to keep you. I know you're a
I'm
busy
definitely
guy.
down for a part two.
Absolutely, man. So Armani, man, I just want to say thank you so much for being, I believe it's episode 38 of the Fly on the Wall show. Thank you so much, man. I'm grateful.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, bro. Until next